Hi there, welcome to Medical Girl Mystical World. I am Dr. Julia Spinella, your host. Today, my guest is Dr. Kelli Ritter. She has a PhD in counseling, and she has 20 years of experience as a licensed counselor working in play therapy and traumatology. She is an associate professor of counseling at Argosy University here in Atlanta, Georgia. And today we are going to be talking about vices and habits. So welcome, Dr. Ritter.
Thank you.
Yay.
I'm excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into what you do now. And then we're going to kind of switch gears, because when I initially wanted you on the show, we were going to talk about the things that you do professionally. But then we had a real personal conversation. I said, this is one of the things I really would like to address on the show. So we'll get to that in a moment, but let the viewers know a little bit about you.
Okay. So I got into counseling really for children. I loved children and babies my whole life, loved children. So when I started working with children in counseling and play therapy, I realized that we really had to work with parents and teachers. So I've done that for 20 years. And then when my father got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, almost 9 years ago. So I got more and more interested in gut health and wellness. And so that's where there was a big shift for me. So that's when I developed the wellness course that I now teach, and had a major shift into wellness, which leads into what our personal conversation that we started talking about was really for me.
Yeah. And also you do work that's based on Brene Brown's work as well.
I do that. Yeah, I do consultation. So I met Brene at a conference. She's a professor. I'm a professor. And she did a talk on her shame work and research. And I was doing a presentation on suicide. And I thought, I really need to understand this personally. So I went to Texas and studied and learned her curriculum and all of that. And then later, Daring Way, Rising Strong. So I just kept continuing, and now I'm a consultant for that curriculum. So I use a lot of the shame resilience work. So I've always been really interested in courage and resilience in all of the work that I've done.
Yeah.
So I continue to do that, and I teach that in my classes and for master's students too.
Right. And we were having a conversation, and when I was telling her the topics that I wanted to talk about, one thing, and a lot of it is in the news now. I actually was listening to a program on NPR that was talking about addictions, and are people really addicted to vices and habits? But I think what we really need to address are the vices and habits that we have to escape our reality.
Oh, yeah.
And we started talking about alcohol use.
Yep.
And I personally, was a daily wine drinker.
Yep.
And, I could have a bottle of wine at night and be fine. If I would, it was like, it was very habitual, where I would get home from work and I would crack open a bottle of wine and sit in front of the TV and veg out and just do whatever.
Yeah.
And then go to bed. And, I wasted my time with that. And it wasn't until I had my kick in the pants, which with my cancer diagnosis, and it was funny because, and this is really sad to me that I actually admitted this, but when I got my cancer diagnosis, I looked at my husband and I said, I cannot imagine me not drinking wine. And it really made me put a step back and say, this is a problem. That's not good. Why is that going to be one of my first responses? And I was just like, damn, this is not good. So we started talking about that. And then as I went through my my treatments and stuff, of course, I abstained from alcohol because I was having chemotherapy, and it would make me feel bad. But I really did. I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
I am not totally sober. I will have an occasional cocktail, maybe once every 2 months. And if I can even finish that, my tolerance had went way down.
Right.
And I really realized then that I just don't feel very good when I drink alcohol. And I know that energetically it depresses us. And, and then I started to kind of analyze why I was doing that. I'm like, what was I doing to make this, what am I hiding from, or what am I avoiding to do this habit? And it was like, is it habitual, or was it an actual addiction? And
right.
I think it was more habitual for me. So when I started telling Dr. Ritter about this, she kind of was telling me her story too. So you tell us about you
when
as
we
well.
started talking about So I think mine was habitual too, and you and I really connected on that piece, because I confessed that I would come in the door from a long day of work and I would pour a big glass of wine before I even said hello to my children,
right,
and the rest of the people my family. So I really started thinking, this seems like I'm numbing a little bit to get through the rest of the evening, what I call the hardest hours of the day, when you come home from work and you have to still be cheerful and feed everybody and all that. And my ritual was to make, have a big glass of wine and make dinner. And I love good food, good wine, good conversation. For me, when I started realizing that what I'm being, I think, shaped to do professionally, I needed to be clean and clear all the time.
Right.
Particularly in the world of wellness and teaching wellness. I wanted to be able to stand up and teach, and from a place where I'm not talking about gut health because I've read it, I live gut health. So when I started, I quit. I drank beer and wine, wasn't a big drinker anyway, but I did love the wine, and I loved champagne, and I started thinking, I don't think I can live without the champagne. I'll quit all the other stuff, but I need the bubbles. The bubbles are what make life good,
Right.
And it really was interesting to watch kind of how I gave up everything else, but I would still and Prosecco was my favorite, a dry Prosecco. And how am I going to do life without this? And I can't believe how much better life is. So I haven't had a drink in over 2 years. So for me, the journey was kind of a slow process of realizing, I think this is in the way. And I think sometimes it's a vice, sometimes it's an addiction, but we know these habits, it can be anything. It can be social media, it can be a food. I say that we're all addicted to sugar because I think we're trying to sweeten the deal. I think life it feels a little bit like it's a raw deal.
Yeah.
And we're trying to sweeten it. And so, and I think for me, I had this, what was happening for me, I would now probably call an awakening, but at the time, that's not what I would have been calling it.
Right.
But I think for me, this awakening, I was waking up and I was hungry for this something, and I was trying to fill it with the champagne or I was trying to get the bubbles in life, and it will never ever come from outside of you. And I knew that intellectually, but I think personally I really had to go on my own journey inward to figure out what are the things that are in the way. And when my sole purpose became my intention, my sole intention was to live in alignment with who I really am. And Brene was shaking hands with Brene that day, I think I changed.
Wow.
Where I thought, I want to live and love and work with my whole heart, all in. Whatever that means, I'm in. I had no idea the things that would have to go.
Right.
In order to live that way.
Right. So let's talk about that, because it is such a shift. And myself too, because I looked at my patterns and saw alcohol as, with that lower energy level.
Yes.
And I realized that some of the people that I was hanging out with were kind of the lower energy people too. And I'm like, this just does not resonate with me anymore.
Right.
So I did. I stopped with because, I could have a glass of wine, get on the telephone and be snarky and all of this stuff and funny. But then I was like, that's not really good stuff. And so I did. I kind of distanced myself from these people that I've known for 20 plus years, and it was a real big shift because they saw the change in me, and I felt pretty alone because I didn't have the usual crew that I hung around with.
Right.
And you have a similar story too.
My crew hasn't really changed that much, but I get what you mean, that I'm just not around them as much. I think that some people have a harder time with my not drinking than I have with their drinking, because of their own. I found that to be really interesting as well. People have lots of questions about, my not drinking and how did that happen. And you can tell the people who are interested.
Yeah.
But when you're with a low vibe and when you're around people and you're living from this higher vibration, it just no longer fits. It's no longer a match. And so, yes, sometimes people, places, things have to go.
Have you found that the people in your circle that you are still part of, have they changed how they look at alcohol or other devices, or other vices, and devices too?
It could be a device that's a vice. I think that it is, in some ways, I think it's helpful for them to start looking at their own stuff. And I think for me to have the courage and bravery to, do this inner dive, other people are like, well, I'm kind of curious about that inner dive. And so I do think people are shifting. Maybe not so much their drinking, but that may not be what needs to shift for them. It's not really about the alcohol as much as I call it the bear once more, energetically. So when my oldest son was young, we had a book called Bear Once More. And the bear in the story wakes up from his hibernation and he's hungry, hungry, hungry. And so he has fish, bear once more. Bear has clover, bear once more. Bear has honey, bear once more. But he gets so big he can't fit through the layer door. And for me, it's a great metaphor for my experience with this whole awakening. I woke up, I was hungry, hungry, hungry. And if you stuff yourself with whatever it is, shopping, food, alcohol, you're not going to fit through the layer door, just energetically.
Right.
My experience has been this kind of whittling. And when I see other people around me, that it's giving them permission to say, well, wait, I want to live my best life. What is this whittling? But I can't say that I recommend so much. I did not think, not that I don't recommend it, but I didn't realize that what I was saying would be this challenging. Yeah. I guess is the best way to say that.
What do you think about, one of my big beefs is that just flies all over me, is the marketing of alcohol and the normalizing of the use. So you even have yoga retreats where they have wine with yoga, hiking, wine night, or, making it where they're having to use wine to get people to do these different things. And it's like I think it's very, contradictory to what the purpose is. Like the yoga with wine, you're there to really get centered and stuff, and you're like throwing it all off. And then just to get people in, it's like, this has become fun, and oh my God, have a glass of wine and do all this. What are your thoughts on that?
I work really hard to not get judgmental around that, because if that's what somebody wants to do, and that's great. But I totally agree with you. It hits me in a way that I'm like, is that really what we're doing there? Yeah. If I have the social hour, just have the wine hour then. Right. I don't know. But for me, when I do yoga, it's a real spiritual experience. I'm on the mat to practice what I'm trying to practice in life, and it just sort of defeats the purpose if I have a glass of wine I don't know. For me, that it's. But I also understand that, we live in a place. I was in Sonoma, and I thought, how in the world am I going to be sober in Sonoma? Everybody drinks wine in Sonoma. Right. Well, there's a lot to do in Sonoma without drinking wine, and it's a beautiful place. But some of the wineries were really not very nice. Like, why are you here if you're not going to taste the wine? I'm like, that's a pretty good question, because everybody I'm with is going to drink, because it's beautiful. And so the wineries that would have cheese and bubbly water, that became, and I'm like, so, maybe you have options for people. But even I went to a brewery recently. I mean, they have food. I was there to eat with people, but they brew their own beer. And she was really sort of like, why do you need, we don't have club soda. We have, beer. I was like, what do the alcoholics do?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
What do you have for them? And she's like, it was very interesting, just the response to me being the non-drinker when everyone drinks. It's a social norm that, that's what makes mama nice to when she's tired, is to have a big glass of wine. I was like, oh, I was there. I know that. But at the same time, what are we doing? What are we saying? That it's not okay to do something different, and that we've got to, in order to get people in, we have to have the beer and the wine and the drinks for everyone. It is interesting. And in social media, like, oh, it's cocktail hour. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. I used to say that. That would come out of my mouth pretty frequently.
And you know what? I would do about that rule. I would not, and I would. And this is a problem too. If you have to check the clock to see it's okay to drink.
I know. Yeah.
I did that. I did. I would wait, and I'm like, oh shit, it's only 10 to 5. And I'm like,
I would be like, oh, that's close enough to 5.
I mean, that's really bad.
But I put so much energy into controlling my drinking, like not before 5, and not on this day, and not if I have to tea. I can't even believe the amount of energy now that I haven't had a drink in so long. It's just not a thing. Like, I don't have to worry about if I'm going to drive, because I can always drive.
Right.
If somebody needs to be picked up at midnight, I'm your girl.
Yeah.
I'm sober, I'm ready. I might be asleep. But, I mean, it's just, I put a lot of energy, and I think that's the vices and habits, that would be a telltale sign for me. If it's something that you're putting a lot of energy into controlling when and how you're doing it, or you're, feeling really yicky about whatever it is, I mean, it could be like buying scarves. I mean, it can really be anything. If you're really into scarves, you got to have enough scarves, but it's that bear wants more. You're looking for that kind of like, doesn't matter how many scarves you get, it's not quite enough. And then you find yourself saying, well, I can't have another scarf because I just bought a scarf last. I mean, if it's that, then it's probably moved out of habit to more of a, this is a problem that's keeping you out of alignment from who you really are. And that's really the main thing.
So we've talked about alcohol, but I want to talk about other vices that many people have, and those are social media, whether it be Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, but also the binge watching of TV, of Netflix and other shows. And again, that was another thing that I did. I kind of paired that with drinking with wine, but also being addicted to shows.
Right.
And I realized when I had this awakening thing, with stopping, it's like, it really did. It cleaned up house because I, decreased the alcohol significantly. But I also stopped watching TV. I have not watched TV in 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And I did. I mean, I had my shows, and I waited for those season premieres and stuff. But then I started breaking down, what could I be doing with my time better?
Right.
And you had mentioned in a previous conversation about how we are so far detached with being kind of with this mind-numbing things that we're doing, whether it be the alcohol use or the binge watching, or just when people do say that, they're like, I'm gonna go watch some mind-numbing TV,
right? That
escape. And you were saying that we need to be more grounded. Tell us a little bit more about that.
And I like that originally you were talking about it was an escape for you, and I think like I said about sugar, I think we're trying to sweeten the deal. I think we're trying to numb and escape. And what I found for me in my personal experience is that I didn't want to feel. I was real into head and what do you think, behavior and thinking. and didn't, even as a professional counselor, I had a hard time with the touchy-feely, like we really have to ask people how they feel. But I think a lot of us we don't want to get in touch with the bad feelings that come along with the good feelings. And we talk about this a lot, particularly in counseling and training counselors. The feeling part, I think we are feeling beings that occasionally think and often behave. I think we've got some pretty good evidence of that now in the data, but I really didn't want to look at that. And so I think it's, we're numbing out with whatever. And if you find yourself checking out to escape life, then that's a place you might want to bring yourself back around. And for me, I think that, I'm not sure what we're doing here. I have conversations all the time with whatever's on the other side. Like, what are we doing here? I think that was my main question as a little kid. I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
What are we humans doing here? And I think that it's not by accident that we're in bodies and we're on the earth and we're here right now at this time. And so if we try to escape all that, we're missing the whole point.
Right. And it's like, is this it? Because
there's
been times when, you do and you're like, is this all that there is?
Right. Yes.
But no, that it's not.
Yeah.
And if we take away those distractors and stuff, people will begin to realize that this is, and that's one of the phrases that drives me crazy. It is what it is. It doesn't have to be, because we have our choices.
Yeah. And I think you and I can probably, just from personal experience, when we give up the things that seem to be time suck, energy suckers. Can I say that? Yeah. They're just energy suckers, really. But you don't recognize it till you recognize it. And that's okay. I think, that's fine. But once you start to recognize, wait, I feel like this is an energy drainer, not an energy booster for me.
Right.
Whatever it is. Then you can start to say, maybe I want to make some different choices with how I'm spending my time. And the energy that you have when you let go of that stuff is amazing. It's been amazing for me.
Right. And I think that we tell ourselves that, well, it's not a problem for me because I get up and I go to work, I take care of my kids are fed, I pay my bills, I do everything that the responsible adult is supposed to do. Why can't I have a little bit of fun? Why can't I zone out and watch my TV shows for 3 or 4 hours? So I think that what people or society needs to see is that you can have those things, but in moderation. But what is moderation, and when is it taking away from us growing as people and as, having better lives?
Yeah.
And I think people use those excuses to supplement their bad behavior or these, vices and habits. So what are your thoughts on that, and what is healthy with these vices and habits? And to add another question on that, because I like to compound all my questions.
Go ahead.
Bringing that in, what would be constitute as an addiction?
Right.
So let's start with
the first part.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And I do think that, people, I said stuff like that, but I'm still responsible. I'm not doing blah, 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 all that. It's true. And you can. What I have to say about that is you absolutely can. We have free will. Yeah. And if you want to live a life where you are not in alignment with who you really are, that appears to be totally fine. I think I have relatives that live and that have died that had normal lives, but never actually realized their real power, never were in alignment with who they really were, but they were, fine human beings, had a job, were pretty responsible people. So my thought on that is you can. Yeah. But if you are hungry for something else, if you are getting this feeling like there's something else, like what are we doing here? What am I doing here? What do I have to give back? Then you might be on the track of there's some things that you might want to let go of that are taking your time and your energy. And if it's moved to an addiction, and here's what I have to say about addiction. If you're feeling like something is in the way, it's probably in the way, and we don't need the DSM to tell us that. I say that even though the morning after I decided I was really done with champagne, I'd quit everything else, but I was really done with champagne. And I was like, what am I saying? Am I saying, like, am I an alcoholic? Do I need to go to AA?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. If whatever I need, I guess I need to do. But I went straight to that DSM.
And the DSM is the Diagnostic
Statistical Manual. I don't even use the DSM in my work, but I just went, but I was proving to myself that I didn't meet criteria to be a functioning alcoholic. I wasn't an alcoholic. It doesn't, I mean, the truth is, I have to laugh at myself. I was laughing myself in the midst of it. Like, what are you doing?
You were trying to prove to yourself
that
you didn't have a problem.
That I don't, and I think that's what we're doing when we're saying, but I pay my bills and my kids are fed and everything's fine and I get up and go to work. Yeah, but do you know how foggy you are? I mean, like, I just want to say to people,
yeah,
okay. But I did the same thing. So I don't want to judge people for where they are.
No.
But the things that I found important is that if you feel like it's probably in the way, it's probably in the way.
Yeah.
And if it's moved to a place where you're feeling like when one of the first things you think is, how I need to have my glass of wine. Like, how's that going to work for me? And then you're probably pretty attached. And I think it's the attachment. It's not even the substance or, the Netflix or these things aren't necessarily bad. It's the attachment to them. And what I've found is if I hang on and say, even it's an idea, like this is who I am. And if it's got to go, it's going. And if I hang on, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And the more it will drag you down and shake you up. And often it will take some sort of
something to kick you in the ass.
Kick you in the ass kind of experience where you're like, okay, I'm listening, okay. Yeah. And I think people still then have a choice to not listen. But it's going to be rough.
Yeah.
And I just call that unnecessary suffering. I think we as human beings, we all can share in suffering. But when it's unnecessary suffering, I mean, you're clinging to something that you think is important, you can't live without it. I mean, people say that all the time about caffeine. I can't live without it. Yeah. I haven't had caffeine in years. You can live without your caffeine.
Right.
But I get that you don't think you can, and that's fine. But when you think that, I mean, when it really becomes a problem, if your true intention is to be in alignment with who you really are, if it needs to go, it's going. And if you're hanging on, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, my experience has been that.
Right. And that's a very good point because people don't, because they know it's going to be hurt. You're going to have the withdrawals from the caffeine or the alcohol or the Netflix. Like, you have that time and you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with my time now?
Oh, yeah.
So what would you tell people that are, because I think it is, I think it's very important that we need to take inventory of our lives and what we do with it.
Yeah.
And what would be your recommendations for people to kind of like look at that, to kind of like step aside and say, okay, and I tell that when I do energy work on my clients and I give them homework, and I said, you really need to really kind of analyze what you're doing and why you're doing things.
Yeah.
And how your time is constructed on doing those things. So what would be your advice for people that really need to take that inventory and assess how they spend their time?
I really think that there is something important about taking responsibility for this particular life, this body. I had a pulmonary embolism a few years ago, that another kick you in the ass kind of experience.
Right.
I was like, all right, I'm listening.
Yeah.
But it was very much I want to be in this body, in this life. There's something important about that and taking responsibility for it. And what that looks like to me is saying, okay, how, just occasionally going, how am I doing here?
Yeah.
What feels like it's in the right direction and what feels like I'm just doing it because I want to be doing. I mean, I think ego gets involved here.
Definitely.
And then you're like, because I said I wanted to. Or whatever. Okay. And again, we can, but is that really in alignment with who you really are? And I do think that you need to be gentle with yourself. If I had one thing to say, I've historically not very gentle with myself, kind of had very high expectations, which can all be great, but especially in this process, when you're really going to look at habits and vices and things that are in the way, to be patient with yourself, to practice a lot of self-compassion, and know that it's a journey. There's no destination, which I was personally pissed about because I'm a destination girl. I'm like, no, I'm going here. You come. We want to come. We're going here.
Yeah.
I mean, I think when you get a doctorate, I'm going there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I really started doing this deep inner work and some of this stuff, I realized there's nowhere to get.
Mm-hmm.
It's a journey, and it's more like a deepening and widening.
Yeah.
Deepening and widening, and that's been interesting. So that's what I would say to people. There's nowhere to get. You go backwards, you go forwards. It doesn't really matter because it's the deepening and the widening.
Right. And I
to be gentle.
Yeah, and that inner work is going to eventually radiate out, and that's when you're going to be attracting people that are in alignment too.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
To do that self-work, I mean, it is, and it can get ugly because,
it's,
that fear comes in.
Yeah. And I think that's the part when I said I can't necessarily recommend it. I didn't realize, I guess, how messy and what we were really talking about. I didn't know that feeling your feelings was going to suck that badly. I mean, I guess that's why I was avoiding it. That's why I was pouring a big glass of wine and saying, it's all fine, keep it moving. I was very much a keep it moving kind of person. I'm still kind of keep it moving, here we go.
Yeah.
And I think that being able to slow down and feel what you feel is tough.
Yeah.
It's just not for the weak at heart.
Mm-hmm. Just to be and be present.
Yes, to be present is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have
some fun questions.
For you.
Okay.
This is my 5 fast Q&A. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions and just
fast answer.
Fast answer right at the top of your head.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. What song makes you get up and dance?
Oh, besides Keep It Moving.
Yeah.
I have a thing for songs that have baby girl in them.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know why, but if it's got baby girl, I mean, I'm like, oh. So yeah.
It's like talking to you.
It's talking to me.
So any baby girl song. Okay. What do you wish you knew more about?
Everything. Probably consciousness.
Okay.
I'm just really curious at the fact that scientists can't even come up with a definition that everyone agrees upon with consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And I, when I started in the field, I was very brain girl. I'm all about neuroscience and brain, and the brain's in charge. And then I started realizing how important the heart is.
Yeah.
And I started, my transformation internally has really been a through the heart kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious about consciousness and where is it anyway?
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
Okay.
All right. What is your favorite smell?
Oh. I'm sorry, when I was thinking of roses, but the first thing that popped into my mind, this is a longer answer, you might have to edit it. But
it's okay.
I was kind of mad when I started reading about awakening and other people's experiences of awakening, and they would talk about this blissful and the smell of it, and I was like, I'm not getting that experience.
What's that smell like anyway?
Right. Mine doesn't smell very good at all. And it's more, I wouldn't say it's not peaceful, but when I go into those moments of oneness, it's more like a nothingness and open. And then I had an experience that was just the most incredible, blissful, and I could smell it. And it was the most amazing smell. And I was like, this is what people are talking about. This is I get bliss now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen very often, but there is no smell like that smell. Mm-hmm. It's indescribable. It's unbelievable.
The smell of bliss.
Uh-huh.
What does that smell?
Everyone should get the smell of bliss once in your life.
Is it? Can you relate it to something that's?
Roses are the only, but it would be a very particular kind of rose that you don't just smell every day kind of thing.
Very unique.
Really unique. Yes.
What's your spirit animal?
Wolf just popped in my head. I'm not sure why.
Okay. Toilet paper. Are you a over or under kind of gal?
Over.
Yeah, me too. Totally.
Over.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That was the last one. Easy one though.
Under, no.
No. Misses it all up.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Ritter, thank you so much for being here. And how can our audience find you?
I have a website.
Okay.
So you can definitely find kelliritter.com.
Okay.
Is my website right now. And
excellent.
With love. I hope that viewers like it.
I'm sure that they will. Okay. Until next time, thanks.